Welcome back, subscribers. This is titled Dog Days of Summer Novel Ideas. And I've been working on some things. I haven't really been posting a lot of videos. And last year, whenever Franklin and I first started this and kind of got things going, I said, hey, man, when it gets to summertime, I said, my production's going to go really low. I said, because I work outside and it just absolutely destroys you. So, um, the the heat just absolutely will just wipe you out. I started wearing a Whoop device. I'm going to do a video on Whoop right after this of what my experiences are so far with it, because we're actually testing it through our company. It's not like a direct, like Whoop didn't call us up like, hey, do you want to go do the testing on it? We're doing it independently, but we're going to be documenting it just to kind of see, like what the results are and things that we're finding and how we're like flexing and testing on it. So I'm going to bring some of that in. And but today we're going to talk about like what the title is. I'm going to stay on task. And Dog Days of Summer. Where's Dog Days come from? First off, so Dog Days it goes back to Sirius Star. That's the dog star is a Sirius Star. So you have Sirius A, B, and C. Dogon Tribe. Sirius is also interrelated to Giza and Egypt. If you know any of that folklore stories, I learned it separately from my, I don't know, transcended experiences, I guess, if you will. And I ended up trying to get answers because of that. And then it led me to Dogon Tribe. And so it was opposite. Like I got the information and then I found out about Egypt and the Dogon tribe. So at any rate, it's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of interesting, weird. I don't have any way to like confirm it. It's just that I received the information before I knew about the information. And then I was like, is this right? And then when I went out and looked for it, I was like, holy cow, it's right here. So whether it's like baked into the consciousness, I get direct, whatever, correspondences with otherworldly information, whatever. It doesn't really make any difference if it's already baked into the ether, and I just tuned into that radio station. It's possible. Either way, I said it's non-terrestrial information, I guess is the way you kind of look at that, because I don't really count etheric information as being earthly, okay, if you will. Summertime, yeah, it's just hot. It's miserable. So in Raleigh, it was like we were getting heat indexes like 105, 108, whatever. And I'm still working outside. I'm doing a project on one of our properties, preparing it for RWA tokenization, and I'm just trying to get all these things done on the property so that it will appraise high. So I was like, well, I might as well go ahead and do these things for. It's just like if you're going to sell a house. So the appraisal value of the house when you tokenize through RWA is you want it to be as high as humanly possible. So I got that thing going on too. So that's going on. I'm doing these projects. It's freaking really hot. And then crypto is just kind of like dead in the water. We're in a bear market right now. If people didn't notice, I just had a phone call with Kayla Brown. I got a phone call from them last week, and I talked to Andrew. And I'll have them on, I think, here once things kind of tame down a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit of market news on crypto and just kind of whatever they see is going on. But, and I told them, I said, yeah, I said our numbers had it going down to by around the 50 range, something like that back in February. And he's like, oh, wow. I go, well, it's not a guarantee. I said it was just something that we're actively playing as being like a shock moment to the system. And I said, but we'd be really happy to get in at 50, back in, because we made a trade, and if it happens this season, I'm gonna have to reinvest back in because I've got money pulled out of the system. I'll put it back in before the end of the year. So yeah, that'd be a really pretty decent win on our part. So anyway, novel ideas. Let's get to that. So we're in the dog days. Nothing's really going on. The market's like just not. There's all kinds of stuff that's in the news, and it's, oil's up and down. They're just messing with the whole system. And whenever this happens, I just kind of like I pull away and go do something else. Go be busy doing something else, and it's a lot more healthy, because otherwise it'll just drive you up the damn wall. So I started using about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I started throwing around ideas because in doing work on the house and preparing it and cleaning things up, I clipped my refrigerant line on my house. and the house that's being actually purchased by one of my companies. So my personal residence is being bought out by one of my companies as a basically, and I'm going to rent it back for myself, like legitimately. And people are, why would you do that? Well, there's advantages to doing that. And also I can tokenize it because I can't tokenize it in my personal name. So that's primarily one of the reasons, but the others is there's a whole bunch of reasons why. At any rate, I clipped the refrigerant line on my outdoor condensing unit, and it was $1,000 to replace the coolant. And it wasn't so much about the $1,000, which was just absolute waste. Like it's draining, and I'm just like, that's it, man. I'm like, there's money, like lighting $100 bills on fire. So I thought there's got to be a better alternative to this because, and of course it happens on a Saturday, and my house is spray foam, so it's really efficient, and it was hot. It was like 80, 85 degrees outside, so the house didn't get super hot. It was all right. Plus I had a small like portable air conditioner that we kind of like limped through for a couple days, but it just didn't dehumidify the space is what you really need. So it got filled up Monday, so we kind of, I wouldn't say suffered for 2 days because we live like kings and queens. You know, if you have central air conditioning in your house and it's hot outside, I mean, we're living like really high in the hog. It's really fantastic. So I got to thinking, I was like, gosh, there's got to be a better way to do it. And I started throwing around ideas and things back and forth to Ezra, my Claude. That's what my Claude's name is. And throwing around and I say, hey man, I've been thinking about this, and here's my experience, my background. And so I put together a system over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks of a chiller system. So it basically uses a refrigerator, like a chest freezer that chills water, or in this case, we're using propylene glycol to draw the temperature down further, so we have more of a head. So basically creating a battery, because I had said, oh, it'd be really cool to be able to like remove at least the heating and cooling off the grid, but keep everything else on grid. And there's some things that we found out with the local energy providers because of my background in property management and investing, that identifies and actually calling and talking directly to my provider, Duke Energy, on how, like, what are their, how's their gating system set up. So if you can have a smaller, it is, at least is in our area, if you could have a smaller system that doesn't consume as much energy, and you were up to, I think, 5 kW, you don't necessarily have to like register the system. It's like 4 or 5 panels, whatever, on the roof. They can really give a shit. It's like whenever you go full paneled, you're either like full off grid or you're on grid. Which are you? So I was like, well, where's the limitation? Where do they cut you off? And they're like, oh, like I think it's like 5 kW, 5,000 watts. So, all right, well, that's kind of a lot of power. And I know from getting my house originally, like years ago, I got numbers on it to get pricing on solar, and it was like 30 grand, and it was 30 grand plus batteries. The whole system was going to cost like 60 grand with, to be like an off-grid type of system like that. And even with that, it was like, there's no guarantee, because if you get, they're like, well, if you get overcast days and you get this, I'm like, shit on that. I'm not doing that. Not to mention 60 grand, run the numbers. I'm like, I'm never going to make the money back. Like, that's crap. Solar panels, 15, 20 year life expectancy. And then you got to junk them, and the batteries, same bullshit. And I'm like, there's got to be some better way to do it. So I started thinking about water, and I thought, well, water, and I asked Ezra, like, how many BTUs could you store if I just talk heating and air conditioning, right? And not about like, I'm plugging in my TV to watch Netflix all day. I'm like, all right, what if I do, like, if I use the water as the battery storage, right? So how many BTUs can be stored in a gallon of water? Spits it out. And I'm like, and I start playing around with all these different numbers in the physics, in thermodynamics, because I have a background in it because of the business that I had. So I used to do heating and air conditioning load calculations, and we had a spray foam business. I was partners with somebody, and it didn't really work out. But anyway, I did all the science stuff, and I sold all the jobs. So I have the technical knowledge and the real world experience to know, like, actually what are these numbers? How do they jive? What's R value, U value? How does, assemblies, windows opposed to walls, opposed to roof decks and crawl spaces. And I would factor all those things in, and it's highly technical, and I don't need to get into that. That's what we do. I still do this, and do give technical advice on essentially like whole home energy systems. And I think that ultimately our company, that we're going to just get back into doing it. It's property management, and we're doing our own properties. But I was like, well, I could do what I used to do before. I would just need to have like a way to manage it, like tell you like, okay, we need to put spray foam in this area of the house, and we need to do, basically like diagnosis suggestions, and then you can go out and do it yourself. So I become like your general contractor, if you will, on your energy system for the whole house. So it's an entire system. It's not just the insulation package. It's insulation with your heating and air conditioning sizing, so that we get the sizing correct, and then how much the air is actually moving in the house, and the whole thing. It's huge difference. And when we were doing it with spray foam, we had a reduction in equipment size of, usually it was around half the equipment size, because the houses were so tight. And actually I was getting more on the cooling side than the heating side, because we were in the Raleigh area. You need about twice as many heating BTUs as you do for cooling. So I started running into a problem where the heat capacity needed to be increased, and we were upside down on the cooling. So you don't need as much cooling. Like they had to have like one unit that would handle the cooling, and then when it switches to heat mode, a heat pump, it enables to it. So it needs to be like this big for heating and this big for cooling, and it didn't really work very well with standard equipment. It really amplified the problems that were in the heating and air conditioning world. So I start pushing along forward with this, and I start running all these numbers in and everything else, and finding out like, oh, water is like really super, 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 super energy rich. Heating it and cooling it, it's really good. It's really abundant, super cheap, and it cycles back and forth very easily. Okay. And it can't catch on fire. I'm thinking against lithium ion and solar and all this other shit. I'm only trying to get part of it out and say like, well, why would heating and air conditioning? It's 50-60% of your entire energy bill right there. And so if you could take that off the table, or if you take it off the table and I make it like way more efficient, right? And I was like, well, to make this work, I'm going to have it at least 50% more efficient of what I already have. And then if I could actually get it closer to 90% efficiency from where I'm actually at. So for every dollar I put in, I'm getting 90 cents back out, that type of thing. I was like, then I would definitely do it. I would consider it, because I really don't spend that much on my house as it is right now. It was more like when I clipped the line, I mean, I only spent on this house, it's about 4,600 square feet, and I spend for cooling it down to 72 degrees, like cold, when it's 100 degrees outside. My electric bill is like $250, $220, something like that. It's not very high. So it's super efficient. So it's not really worth it to me. I don't really have a lot of ROI on it. And then most of that I think is the heating and cooling, because I don't really have a lot of stuff on besides the as you start, the computer and whatever else is running in the house. But there's not really much running. I've got gas, hot water. So I have a way to like say like probably most of my bill. It might be 70 to 80% of my bill is actually. So now we're getting into like, we're like, okay, maybe that's, if I'm spending $250 a month, that's what is that? For every 100, if I get around, if it's 80%, that's $80. So it's 160. So it's could be $150 to $180 a cycle if I got 100% of it off. It's somewhere in there. So maybe 200, maybe it's $150. I think is what I came up with. And I was like, does that really justify putting all this time and energy into it? And I was like, well, right now, not really. But in the future, we know this because of our work with RWA and ESG and all this other business, like understanding like how this new digital system and digital identification and all this other crap is going to be playing in. And I get thinking, I was like, well, in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be like penalized for how much energy you're using. And everybody getting their energy bill, and it says like, oh, your house does XYZ against your neighbor and houses that are the same relative square footage and and like, you're not really very efficient. You need to do better. And I'm like, and I know it's a lie. I know damn well, because I've talked to other people that have similar size houses. I'm like, do you get this shit? I'm like, how much is your electric bill? And then they tell me, and I'm like, yeah, that's bullshit. My house is twice as efficient as yours, and they're telling me that my house isn't efficient? Like, yeah, that's bullshit. That's total crap. It's a conspiracy. Regardless, I know how these assholes play. So what I started saying, I was like, all right, well, in 5 to 10 years, if they start really heavily penalizing and really going after it's like an energy war. It's not that they don't want you to have it; they're just going to make you pay. All right, make you pay. So I've always been kind of a champagne and a beer budget kind of guy, and I was like, all right, well, you add another 10 years on me or 20 years and be like, I'll be damned if I'm going to be in my rocking chair bitching that I can't pay for the electricity because like I'm not really working anymore and making any money. So, or that you've ruined my social credit score because I use XYZ energy. It's just a fucking scam. I get it. Because all the energy is going to be going to all the data centers. I can't fight that fight. But what I can do, and I can speculate that, yeah, that's the way that these guys do business. And yeah, it's probable it's going to go in that direction. What if I reduced it significantly? What if I reduced my consumption load so that it was so low that I'm totally off the grid as far as the social credit and the energy consumption, right? So I was like, okay, well, it'll give me a little bit of a lot more headroom than everybody else. I was like, I like that. I was like, well, I like that, thinking in the future because I'm a long game kind of guy. I'm a position type of person. I'm not like what's happening in the market today. Like, what do I need to get, prepare myself for? Got this kind of Clark Kent thing going on today. What's going on in the future for me to prepare myself for that space, or is it just today? Do I just live for today or tomorrow? And I'm always like, on both, but most of it is like long-term stuff and setting up plans to set this up. It's for the future. My current equipment on the property, was installed in 2018. I think he charged me, it's like $12,000. Change outs right now in the area, and I've talked to a number of guys. They're going for anywhere from like 10 to 20, depending upon how big your house is and how complicated the system is. So that's inevitable. And systems are lasting 10 to 15 years. So I'm getting into that window. When I hit the 10-year mark, I was like, I don't want to go back with conventional equipment if I can come up with a system, you see. So I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and get this stuff laid out and see if I can design a system that will be able to way outperform the existing stuff. So I start brainstorming all these different ideas and things like that. And we came up with one, right? And I'm going to be sharing it on our private site, the Reservoir Human site, because it is proprietary information for ultimately, I think, what's going to be part of our like consulting, I guess, of the company, that what we're doing, not necessarily Reservoir Human, but my other company that will do consulting and proper sizing and things like that, because I used to do it and I haven't done it for like really like 20 years. So, but it's the math and the science is the same. The building science is the same building science. Now, the difference is that I actually have a system that's designed to really combat and handle a lot of the problems that were in existing equipment and how to store the energy. So the first thing I started doing was looking at how long your energy cycle is. And I went from on a need basis, again, if we look at it from like a longer range, I started looking at it on a 24-hour clip, saying like, all right, it's just like if you needed batteries. I started looking at it the same basic principles as you'd have with solar with batteries, and saying like, well, if I could pull an XYZ energy and then store it in the battery and use it, put it in my car or whatever else and run off, then I need that every single day. So the sun provides every day. Apollo is always throwing energy at you. So it's like, all right, well, but what if it's overcast? Oh, they do a 3-day buffer. So they oversize everything like pretty significantly. And I was like, that's shit. I don't want to do that. I was like, there has to be something that's a lot more consistent where I could like guarantee, plug it in and know that, again, if I'm using my energy provider, but I'm using a lot less, like say I'm using, instead of, I'm using say 80% less of the energy. We'll use that as a number. Cause I actually came up with like a total savings of almost 90%, 87%, roughly, something like that. And I'm going to tell you why. Then I'm still using a little bit of energy. I'm grateful to Duke Energy because they have energy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I just need a little bit. Danny just needs a little bit, just a little bit. So if I do that, it's consistent. I don't have to go all in and be off grid and psycho and, be a prepper and say like, screw everybody, I'm doing it myself, I'm a free man, and be like, no. I'm going to use it, but I'm going to use it my way. All right. So, So I'm going to play their game, but I'm going to play it my way, which is I'm going to use it how I want to use it. So I start looking at it and saying like, okay, we'll use water, we'll use conventional refrigeration, and then we're going to use a hybrid where we're transferring the energy out of the refrigeration system with water, or in this case, propylene glycol. So it's liquid. So it makes it way more efficient. And as I start learning more about this and throwing the ideas around, I just like pops into my head. I'm like, well, how efficient is the equipment on the outdoor equipment whenever your fan runs out there and air conditions and it's 85, 95, 100 degrees. And it's a rating of SEER, S-E-E-R. And SEER stands for like, it's an energy rating. I don't need to get into it. But at any rate, the test rating goes from 65 to 104 is how they rate it. And I'm like, no, 62 is where it starts. And I'm like, well, that's not real. I was like, and where do you hit 50% efficiency? Oh, they said it on the cold side up for heating or cooling rather. It's 95 degree outdoor temperature, 50 cents on the dollar. And I was like, well, let's fix that graph. Can you go ahead and this is where the Ezra was great with the AI. And I was like, can you go ahead and rerun those numbers? But I want you to shift the delta on that to 62 to 72, because nobody's really turning their air conditioning on at 62. I don't give a shit how well the unit runs at 62. That's like a fluff number. Like the manufacturer's like, hey, let's start it off at 62 because somebody might need to run the air conditioner at 62, which is true. You might get a lot of solar gain, you need to run it, and it's like prime. This is the best efficiency you're going to have. I get it. But realistically speaking, someone's going to open a flipping window, okay? So when you need it, 72. I was like, let's deviate that, because what's happening is that it's not run at that. So when they run the efficiency numbers against 62 degree outdoor temperature, it fluffs the numbers on the high side. So it's basically, so I said, can you just go ahead and take that delta and shrink it 72 to 104 degrees and shrink it and then rerun the numbers. And you could do this. Just take it and just do it myself and check the numbers. It drops that 50% efficiency number down to about 85. So I'm like, oh, so when you hit 85 outdoor temperatures, that equipment, somewhere between 85 to 90 degrees, somewhere in that range, and it's a give or take, depending upon the manufacturer and all other business, 50 cents, a buck in, you're getting 50 cents out. And I'm like, that's shit. That's not good. So what does that mean? That means that if I need capacity on my house of let's say 1 ton of air conditioning, which is 12,000 BTUs. If I need that, which on an average house is about 3 to 4 tons, we'll say 3 tons on an average, like 2,500 square foot house is 3 tons of air conditioning. So that means that's 36,000 BTUs. You multiply it out. So again, this is all a numbers thing. It's not like there's no tricks or anything. And then essentially, I'll show you here really quick while I'm talking, and I'm going to show you what this calculation software that I use, what it looks like what it's. So let's see here really quick. I'll just open this file. I think I can put it over here. Let's see if I can do this. So I start running these numbers through, and I'm like, the outdoor equipment 50%. I was like, how do we increase that? What if I use water to cool it? Oh yeah, that's great. So instead of using the outdoor stuff, I was like, if you have a heat sink and you run water over it, it cools it significantly. Like a huge margin, 6 to 7 times margin better energy efficiency. So basically, instead of using a fan to cool all that coolant down, use water. Not just drizzle water over it, like a totally different system. And that we had, worked up and designed a custom system out of this. So at any rate, I start working a little bit more into this and finding out that it increases it. Just that is about a 60 to 70% increase by water transference. So whether I'm taking the coolant and I'm storing the cooled energy into water, and I'm taking the heat away from the refrigeration system and I'm getting rid of it with water, that allows the compressor, the thing that actually makes the refrigeration happen, it runs super efficient and it stays inside the same line. So it's just like a slow running. The analogy was like, oh, this is like a diesel electric, like a train That's the reason why they use diesel electrics, because the diesel engine runs really low and slow, high torque, tons, it's very, very energy efficient. That's the reason why they do it. But it makes electricity. Same principle. Example, Mercedes-Benz, it's a prototype. It's 170 mile a gallon relative with a 2-liter diesel engine that runs. It's a diesel electric hybrid. So it's like a Prius, Toyota Prius, only it runs on Mercedes diesel. 170 miles a gallon. And guess what? You can't buy it. Definitely not in the States. Oh, geez, that's the way it goes. So we're essentially creating that diesel electric hybrid on your house. All right. That's the same exact stuff, and it could be commercial, housing, anything, any property. And I'm like, well, just right out of the box, I'm like, I can make this shit 60 to 70. I'm at about 70% bar right now without all the other accoutrements. There's all kinds of little sundries and elements and things, like, as I've been going through it, that make it even more efficient. So it starts to get, that's where I said I'm somewhere between, it's pretty close to 90%. All right. And for example, like you're layering storage capacity. So I don't have startup costs, startup of the equipment, because I'm using chilled water or glycol as a storage facility. So no more lithium batteries. So if I have 100 gallons of chilled fluid, because the equipment just runs, the equipment's smaller and it just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs and makes it colder and colder and colder and colder. So whenever I say, oh, I need air conditioning, it just bleeds off a little bit of the cold, like as a battery. And I'm like, so it's a multi-stage system. Then there's redundancies that are in it. I have multiple compressors that are running. If one breaks, not a big deal. The other one will just keep going, so that if I have a rental for my own house, I don't get, like, it's not an emergency HVAC call to be like, oh my gosh, can you get a guy? It always happens Friday at 5 o'clock that it breaks. Shit. Oh, we get a heat wave and it's on a long weekend and it's a holiday weekend and and nobody's working. Oh, I'll send a technician out. It's $300 an hour. No, you know what I getting at. And I'm like, I'm basically like building a better mousetrap. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go ahead and make this so that I've had these calls before and I've paid the money out before. And I'm like, I'm going to make these like simple redundancies. So instead of like a 1-ton piece of equipment, I'm going to do 2 half-ton pieces of equipment. All right. And they're very, very small, but I'm going to run them in series to one another. Just like you're stringing like a string of Christmas lights. You just plug each one into each other. So it's like a modular system that is very, it's expandable. It has a kind of a plug and play thing. If I need this much air conditioning, you need this many units. Okay, whether it's a 1/4 ton, a 1/3 of a ton, half a ton, 3/4 ton, etc. That you could just keep expanding these units, and then ultimately the system runs water through the system, which is super versatile. I said super energy packed. There's your lithium ion battery. So we start pushing a little bit more onto this, and then I start, learning about refrigeration, how that whole thing works, and then like how large of equipment we need, and then what the energy draw is, and that's where I start coming up with these numbers. So I'm going from essentially running wattages 4,500 watts on my existing system down to running watts 750 watts. It's just like, and that's like on paper rule of thumb. Like, and again, it's better on a 24-hour clip. So on the next video, I'm going to show the calculation of basically how this all works and why your stuff is shit, why it doesn't work. And it works, but it's just not where the efficiency is going out the window on demand. And so anyway, we're really excited. And it's like these elements inside the dog days of summer are allowing you to do something different, that is novel, that allows you to take like existing pieces and parts. And I like to kind of fit them in. It's like making a new entree or something at a restaurant, right? And it's like I have all these different ingredients and be like, well, what can we make with it, right? And that's essentially what we've done. I haven't like reinvented the wheel, although there's a major element to this system that is nobody's ever done it before, and I'm going to be able to test it on the property, and I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it in probably the private forum. I might talk about it in this because I really don't think anyone's going to put all this together, because even the geothermal guys, they might be able to put it together, but this is something that can be done by anybody. There isn't. It's just me getting the idea and putting all these pieces and parts together and bouncing it off of Ezra, but actually running the actual building science and getting the actual real numbers down to see, like, is this actually really plausible? Like, is Danny's like mind and the way that I've come up with this new system is that this novel new heating and air conditioning system, would this actually really work? And I'm going to show you in this next video, like, what the building science is behind this, and basically how this works, and be like, well, what type of money are you talking, Danny? And be like, well, on my house, if I could cut the heating and air out, and actually go off grid heating and air, because of that much of a reduction, I could run it off grid. You see, because now it's like I don't really have that much of a load to run your air conditioner, or even to get heat from solar hot water, but people aren't really looking at it this way because of the capacities of how much you actually really need to heat and cool the house. And I'm going to show you where people are losing out on this, and how to fix it. But that's also what we do, like in our what I used to do in consulting in our other business. But I think I'm just going to start doing it again. So a lot of it's proprietary information, and you're going to see that I know my shit because what I'm going to show on the next video. So I think that there's just some things that are inside it that have to remain proprietary, because someone's going to get a hold of it and they're going to make some mistakes, because there's things that I'm not talking about, of discoveries that I've made with over, I have more than probably 20. I've got 30 years of building experience as a general contractor. But in that world, I had about 6 years. And I was also trained in Canada, so I've got some credentials, and then also I do these load calculations, which not very many people know how to do. So I'm going to show you that in the next video, and kind of show you like what's going on with it, and how this works. And I'll just keep talking about this because, that's a huge play. And say, well, how much would it save you? And be like, well, when it got really cold, I was I can supplement my house with wood, which is what I do, which is really cheap. We just like a wood fire because it's nostalgic. It's really nice. And my house is really tight, so I don't need that much. But we ran out of wood last year. And I get like a load of logs, and I have to cut them up to certain sizes because we have a really small stove. So anyway, we ran out. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go buy some right now. We had like one last month in February that was super cold. We had like a 2-week span, like 2 weeks in, maybe 3. But it was like not the whole month, because we were like almost out of the woods into early spring in the Raleigh-Durham area, and it was like below 20 outside, super cold, and that never happens. And January the 1st, Duke Energy went up in their pricing like 50%. So per kilowatt hour, it went up 50%. Plus, we got a super cold snap. I paid I think it was like $380 or $4 something. It was a lot. It was on my electric bill. And it's all electric house, so I don't have any other besides the wood heat. No wood heat, electric house, heat pump, heat strips, running like crazy. And it might have been in the 400 range. I remember looking at it, I was like, what? And that's also part of the reason why it got me. It was like a way back burner thing. But that was like, I better make sure that I have wood on hand, because I'll be damned if I'm going to be spending. Like in one season, I spend maybe $100 on wood. That's how efficient the house is. So it's like, it's not that big a deal. But I'm like, screw that. If I turn this on, I'm lighting $100 bills on fire. So anyway, if you take my entire energy bill, you take out, say, 70% of it is heating and cooling. And I can also do hot water with this too. So hot water, we have an instant on-demand hot water that I use I have to get delivered propane. And the house is kind of like not in town. So we have to get delivered propane, which is really expensive. So that costs me like $120 a month for that. Plus our cooktop is gas, and we cook a lot. So the hot water is on demand. So if I got that out of it, I would probably be total about $250 a month on average with heat. It might be, that's probably on average a month. Maybe when it's nice outside, which we get these temperature swings. It's probably about $200. So it's probably, I think I estimated originally about $3,000 a year on this property. So even if it's $2,500 at current energy prices, right? So then I'm like, it's not really that much money. It's not that big a deal. But I was like, well, but if I have to like replace the system in like a couple of years anyway, and I could like save that, and put it towards something else, Like, it's a couple grand. I could go do something. That's a nice vacation. Shit, I should go do that. So I start looking at it, but I was like, oh, but in rentals, I said, that's a really big deal. I was like, if I had 10 rentals, that's $20,000 a year, and I'm like, or 30, depending upon the size house. And I was like, and I could market it because whoever's renting it is going to pay less money on their energy bills. So people are going to be less apt to leaving the property because I market it because it's going to be like a super energy efficient house. It's like, because it is. And because we're actually like, I don't have to like really like tighten the house up and make it like super efficient, like insulation wise. I just like have fixed the heating air conditioning system and made it way more efficient. So anyway, it's a marketing plan like long term for the company. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like if I could make an extra, if you could make 20, 30,000 and have it so that you have got less headaches with customers calling because the shit breaks. And I'm not hogtied by not, by equipment and having to switch equipment out that doesn't last. Reinstallation costs every 10 years. And I'm like, oh, that's way more than that. I said on a monthly basis, if I have to spend, it's at least $1,000 a year to have to replace the equipment. So I'm looking at another $100 just for replacement costs. Plus, I mean, since I've had the equipment put in, I've spent a few $1,000s just to have maintenance and stuff done on the equipment. Like it just doesn't work, and a control board goes out, or like all this bull. Everybody knows what that is. So at the end of the day, I might be at $300. Do you see what I mean? Like there's a cascade effect of actually like how much it's actually really costing you to heat and cool your house, and it's pretty significant when you start running numbers. Now you're talking like if I'm at $300 a month, I was like, now I'm like into that potential $3,500 to $4,000 range a year. Now I'm like times 10. I'm like, that's almost 50 grand. Like if that's 50 grand in today's money, plus if I do that times 10 properties, I'm like, ooh, that's a lot. Like 50, that's $500,000. That's it. That's entrepreneurial. That's how, that's the world of being an entrepreneur. And I'm like, that's worth investigating and exploring. So if I could make an extra $500,000 by me designing equipment and using my expertise, well, that's worth doing it to me, even if it's $10,000 a year and I don't really have that much time into it and the AI is doing all the work. So anyway, I'm going to show you the next video. I'll title that something a little bit different, but you'll see that I have this different, it's the same shirt on because I'm just going to go ahead and do another video on this. And I'm going to kind of show you like how this all works a little bit, to a degree. Okay, cheers.